Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cuccinelli, does the allegation of no or few charges of election fraud indicate that there is no election fraud?
No, sir.
I thank you for that answer. I want to ask you about the ACE Act and requiring the presentation of a photo ID before casting a ballot in person. Would that lessen the probability of election fraud?
It would.
Is that used in other states?
It is used all over the country and for many more things than merely elections. I have a list of about 100 different things we require IDs for. Including, by the way, in the District of Columbia.
Right. Before you can do a number of things.
Pet. Yeah.
Yeah. I also want to talk a little bit about the integrity of voter files. I think it was about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, that the Pew Research Center published a report and said there's 24 million Americans improperly registered. I think they said 2.7 million of them are registered in multiple states, 1.8 million of them are deceased. And for instance, the state of Michigan, according to information from another group that's involved in voter integrity, is 105% registered to vote. Now, for some of my people who don't quite understand the math on that, that means there's 5% more people registered to vote than actually old enough or qualified to vote in the entire state of Michigan. Is that a problem?
That sort of circumstance would be a huge problem, yes.
How about over 800,000 inactive voters still on the rolls in Pennsylvania?
Anytime you have a large inactive voter roll that isn't being
1.5 million,
it's a problem.
1.5 million more people registered to vote in Los Angeles County than live in the county who would be eligible to vote?
Yes, and I believe court ordered them just recently to remove 1.2 million ineligible or dead or gone voters.
Right. So there are things.
That's just the one county.
That's just one county. That's Los Angeles County. By the way, in the state of Michigan, there's 16 counties that are over 110% registered to vote, including one that's 119%. And I believe in citizenship and patriotism, but don't you think that's going a little bit too far?
Yes, sir.
I think the thing that we need to do is recognize that there's a large percentage of the population that has lost confidence in our elections. And we need to make sure that every individual citizen who's eligible to vote knows their vote counts. If there's the old saying in politics, perception is reality, I think that's true in other issues, particularly with election fraud. And it may be, as some have said, that there's little to no election fraud. But from my perspective, there should be zero election fraud. How do you feel about that?
I certainly agree with you, and I would note, just as a lawyer, we talk about not just justice, but the appearance of justice, and I would say the analogy applies in elections. We want the best run, cleanest, most accessible elections. We also want them to be cleanly run and with integrity. So the appearance is important to the confidence in the outcome as well as actually doing the job well.
I've done quite a bit of work on this, and again, going back to the District of Columbia. In 2022, there was reporting that the District of Columbia is at risk of being formally removed from the ERIC program, which assists multiple states in keeping clean voter rolls. This is due to DC's inconsistency in reporting on its own data, not somebody else's data, their own data. Can you explain how the ERIC system works and how this potential removal would affect DC elections? And is that a problem?
So the ERIC system has its own controversy, but the idea is that because states that run their own elections and the District of Columbia, that when individuals might otherwise show up on two voter rolls, the two states work via the ERIC system to remove that person from the appropriate voter roll from which they should be removed. That does not often happen, which is one of the problems even in making the ERIC system useful even in that way.
Do you think we need to add another criteria that proof of citizenship, that states and the District of Columbia should be allowed to require proof of citizenship in order to vote? I mean, when we passed the 1993 National Voter Registration Act, Then member Nancy Pelosi went to the microphone and argued that it would protect us from voter fraud. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely think citizenship requirements are appropriate, and the federal government should get out of the state's way in allowing them to enforce that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.